with Western Australian plates, one IGG659, on the Stewart Highway south of Glendambo, about a 2-hour drive from Gus's location. Witnesses, including several truck drivers, reported his vehicle swerving erratically that afternoon, raising immediate concerns. Then, on September 27th, the exact day Gus was reported missing, Benjamin's car was found abandoned in dense scrub about 10 kilometers off the highway at Wirramina. No sign of Benjamin, and details about him remain scarce. We don't know his surname, his family background, or why he was even in the area. Police launched a wide-scale search with SES volunteers, drones, and local trackers. But he's still out there, unaccounted for. The proximity and timing have locals buzzing with questions. How could two people vanish so close together in such a remote spot?
First and foremost, our thoughts are with Gus and his family. We would love to have resolution to this matter, but not any more than the family with themselves.
It is difficult. People want answers. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on the police heading up the investigation, and from what I can see, they're throwing everything they've got at the finding out what's happened.
Baffling, isn't it? Yeah,
it is, and hopefully they get answers sooner rather than later.
Indeed. Good on you, Gary. Nice to see you.
Thanks
so much, Jane.
On the afternoon of September 27, 2025, a little boy named Gus Lamont was playing near the family homestead at Oak Park Station. 4 years old, curly-haired and ordinary in every human way, he was last seen in the sandpit close to the house while relatives went about daily tasks nearby. By the time the family realized he was gone, a sequence of minutes had stretched into a window the outback does not forgive. What began as frantic family searching quickly became one of the largest ground operations the state has seen. Hundreds of people, machines and trackers combing terrain that resists memory. This is the account of that search and the questions it left in the red dust. How the search unfolded, what the teams found and didn't find, how the landscape shaped the operation, and why investigators have had to shift from immediate rescue to long, methodical inquiry. The sheer scale of the operation reflects the gravity of losing a child in an unforgiving environment. At Oak Park Station, roughly 470 square kilometers were canvassed in the weeks following Gus's disappearance. That figure isn't an abstract statistic, it's a measure of how much ground human eyes and technology had to cover. The search involved multiple agencies and resources. Australian Defence Force personnel brought endurance and logistics support. Police coordinated investigative activity, drones scanned from above, helicopters combed remote ridgelines and creek beds, Aboriginal trackers brought knowledge of animal patterns and subtle signs in the landscape, and hundreds of local volunteers walked line after line, returning again and again to the same stretch of scrub in the hope that something previously missed would reveal itself. Every team had a role. Drones offered a bird's-eye sweep and helped identify broader features, shallow gullies, fence lines, water troughs, that foot teams then inspected. Helicopters enabled rapid access to remote patches that vehicles could not reach, while night vision and thermal equipment tried to pick up heat signatures when daylight faded. Aboriginal trackers read the terrain in a language of tiny disturbances, the way a twig lay, the angle of a scuff, the pattern of disturbed soil, that a map can't show. Volunteers provided numbers and presence. More boots mean more ground covered, and in a missing person search there's an undeniable moral urgency to doing something. Yet, despite all this, the outcome remained painfully meager. No confirmed clothing, no verified sightings, no clear trail leading to the boy. The land had, in effect, refused to give up what it knew. A renewed search concentrated on a roughly 5.5-kilometer radius around the homestead, a targeted sweep that covered approximately 95 square kilometers on foot. That renewed push was intensive. Teams walked long days, covering up to 20 to 25 kilometers on foot in a single shift, mapping and photographing everything they encountered. The logic of a renewed, concentrated sweep is simple. Initial searches often go wide and then teams shrink into a precise grid to leave no stone unturned. In Gus's case, repeated passes through the same corridors were necessary because the environment itself erased evidence quickly. Hot, dry winds lift fine dust, softening the edge of a footprint. Passing vehicles and successive search lines can blur small clues into indistinguishable marks. The renewed effort was therefore an admission of necessity, a commitment to revisit and to apply every available technique until investigators could either find physical traces or exhaust plausible locations. The conditions during the operation were brutal and unpredictable. Temperatures climbed above 36 degrees Celsius on several days, heating the ground and sapping energy from foot teams. Heat affects both people and equipment. Fatigue sets in faster, decision-making is strained, and technology such as drones suffers from heat-related limitations on battery life and sensor performance. Sudden dust storms made visibility vanish within minutes, and those storms did more than impair sight. They rewrote the very impressions searchers were chasing. A small set of bare footprints recorded in the morning could be gone by afternoon if winds picked up and the dust settled differently. Vehicles moving across fragile tracks can also unintentionally destroy evidence, which is why careful coordination is essential. Organizers had to route vehicles cautiously, station command posts strategically, and time sweeps to match the cooler parts of the day when impressions were more likely to hold. Despite repeated, painstaking sweeps and a major concentration of human power, there were no confirmed clothing items recovered that could be definitively linked to Gus, and no verified civilian sightings beyond the initial moments reported by the family. Early in the search, volunteers photographed and logged various impressions: a partial footprint, faint depressions in sand, and reports of clothing resembling the child's. Each of these sparks hope in a community, but each also required forensic validation. In rural searches, ordinary items can be misleading. The same scrap of fabric can belong to a previous visitor, a working dog's chew toy, or a passerby who had been on the property months earlier. Footprints that look at first glance like small bare feet may later be reclassified as degraded boot prints, tire impressions, or animal pads. Forensic teams photographed, cataloged, and analyzed everything. They also had to be disciplined about ruling things out when the evidence didn't hold up under scrutiny. That discipline is vital because every false lead costs time and attention that could be better focused elsewhere. Because the probability of finding Gus alive became increasingly remote as days passed, police reorganized their approach and established Task Force Horizon to re-examine every piece of evidence from the beginning. The formation of a task force is a signum. This is no longer merely a search and rescue operation conducted at speed. It's a longer, investigative process that requires careful documentation and detective work. Task Force Horizon's mandate was to integrate interviews, forensic results, digital data, vehicle movements, and search logs into a coherent timeline and to follow leads that might not be time-sensitive but could point toward who knew what and when. Investigators re-interviewed witnesses, cross-checked alibis, retraced family movements, and reviewed drone footage and photographs with fresh eyes. The aim is to create a mosaic from discrete tiles. Each small detail, a timestamp, a faded print, a passing vehicle, can change the overall picture when it's considered alongside others. The human side of the case is complex and raw. The Lamont family has repeatedly stated their cooperation with police, and investigators publicly note that foul play remains unconfirmed. But alongside the formal process, the family has had to cope with relentless public attention, speculation, and, at times, invasive scrutiny. The delayed release of a clear photo of Gus prompted debate. Some argued a prompt release would generate leads. Others said investigators needed to verify identity and protect the family's privacy. That tension is familiar in missing person cases. Families want help and answers, but they also deserve measured communication and protection from sensationalism. As police balance those competing demands, they also warn the public against sharing unverified claims. Social media complicated an already difficult situation. In the hours and days after Gus disappeared, misinformation proliferated, altered images, false sightings, and AI-generated content circulated widely, drawing attention away from verified leads. Each false claim required police resources to debunk or investigate, and each hoax risked overwhelming tip lines with noise. Authorities urged the public to rely on official channels and to forward credible information rather than repost unverified material. The human consequence of online distortion is considerable. Seeing false images or sensational stories can add to a family's trauma and distract volunteers and law enforcement from real leads that deserve focus. Beyond misinformation, there are coincidences that investigators cannot ignore but must handle cautiously. Reports emerged that a man named Benjamin had disappeared nearby just one day before Gus vanished. Coincidence in such cases is a double-edged sword. It can point to a shared pattern or be a random overlap that draws unwarranted connections. Investigators treat such coincidences as data to be checked, not as conclusions. They pursue vehicle movements, residency overlaps, and any shared contacts that might explain a proximity of incidents. At the same time, they maintain the discipline to avoid conflating unrelated events simply because the timing feels ominous. Good investigation tests coincidence against corroborating evidence. If links exist, they can be critical. If not, assuming a connection damages the integrity of both cases and consumes attention that might be better spent elsewhere. Experts called on in and around the search were clear about one thing. While the outback contains real dangers, the kinds of animal attacks that populate public imagination are considered unlikely explanations here. Local trackers, volunteers, and professional search coordinators pointed out that wedge-tailed eagles, dingoes, or crocodiles, the classic wildlife suspects, would typically leave physical traces. Birds of prey large enough to carry a human child are extremely unlikely to operate unnoticed in this environment. Dingoes or feral dogs tend to leave blood, torn clothing, or drag material. Crocodiles are not native to the region around Oak Park Station, making that theory implausible. These biological and ecological realities narrow the field of probable causes and push investigators back to human timelines, movements, and interactions as the most productive lines of inquiry. What does all of this mean for those who follow the case and for the family waiting for answers? First, the searches restart and the mobilization of Task Force Horizon signal that authorities are not closing the file. They have shifted methods and personnel, trading the immediacy of rescue for the deliberate work of investigation. Second, the environment itself, scorching heat, dust storms, and featureless scrub, can erase or mask tiny clues almost instantly, which is why multiple, methodical sweeps and repeated re-examinations are necessary. Third, human cooperation remains essential. Family, neighbors, workers, and visitors all hold pieces of the timeline, and police need their testimonies. Fourth, public behavior matters. Responsible sharing, restraint from speculation, and sending verified tips directly to authorities are small acts that help rather than hinder. This case is far from over. The lack of confirmed physical evidence, the vastness of the area searched, the presence of misleading traces, and the reality of online misinformation have made the search both technically demanding and emotionally bruising. But the investigative posture now in place, a coordinated task force, repeated sweeps, forensic assessments, and careful witness interviews, is how persistent, complex cases are resolved. The work is slow, painstaking, and often invisible to the public eye, but it is how truth is pieced together when immediate answers do not appear. The land at Oak Park Station has kept its secrets so far, and the community remains in the tension between hope and patience. If you want to help, do 3 things: share only verified information, send any tips directly to police, and hold the family's privacy and dignity foremost in your conversations. The searchers will keep returning to the ground, the investigators will keep rechecking timelines, and those who care about Gus will keep asking questions. Until every footprint is accounted for and every credible lead exhausted, this story will not allow the comfort of closure. Keep asking, keep watching, and keep Gus's name alive.